Kerry journey. Still south I went, and west, and south again, from Glenamaddy, from the morning to the night. And far from cities and the sights of men, lived with the sunshine and the moon's delight. I knew the stars, the flowers, the birds, the grey and wintry sides of many glens, and did but half remember human words in converse with the mountains, moors and fens.
And we're in the parish of Lixna now, so we can see the remains of the old church. That will be the second church. The church of St. Trilloch was there before that, of whom Jacob takes his name of the hermitage of St. Trilloch. So again, here. Good morning, John Malachy Raftery from Glenamaddy, and you're welcome to Dyshirt Graveyard in the parish of Lixna in County Kerry, which is here on the banks of the lovely River Feel. Dyshirt is the ancient heritage of St. Trilloch, and indeed the church remains that we are looking at would be a slightly later church, which probably dates from the 8th or 9th century up to the very early 14th century. The Monk's Roadway, which came from the Abbey down at Ratu, passed very close to us here, and apparently it did cross the river through Coolagown and went on to another monastic site, Kil-Aha-Crim, or the Church of the Crooked Ford. Now, that old roadway was pointed out by none other than the late Thomas Carmody of Ennismore in 1944 and the late Mick Purtle. But no trace of that road exists at this moment in time, because that road was replaced by the new road which was made in Coolagown and Bonnacollig in 1911. And again, the other thing about it was that when the monks were making their escape during penal times, they would have come on this way, and they lived in a safe house which was part of the Ennismore house, which was up here very close to us. Now, when the four monks that were living there, they called their little house St. Peter and Paul's, which would indicate that they certainly came from Ratu. We can see the tombstone of the Knight of Kerry, because the Knights of Kerry lived up here across in Ennismore. That's where the earlier Knights of Kerry are buried. Later, their relatives and their in-laws, the Hewsons, are buried beneath the yew trees. You have a good sprinkling of both religions buried in this graveyard, and the people from across the river, both from Ennismore and Gortnaminch and somebody maybe from Bonnacollig, their funerals would have been brought across the river by boat, and they would have been buried here, because we didn't have any bridge in Finuig until 1911. So you're in a very historic spot. It's a very peaceful spot on the banks of the River Feel.
Goramahagoth, Tim. Dyshirt Graveyard near the banks of the Feel. When we look upon the tombs of the great, emotions of envy die in us. When we read the epitaphs of the beautiful, every inordinate desire goes out. When we meet parents' grief on a tombstone, our hearts melt with compassion. When we see tombs of the parents themselves, we ponder the vanity of grieving for those whom we must quickly follow. When we see kings laying by those who depose them, rival wits placed side by side, and holy men that divided the world with their disputes, we reflect on the little factions of mankind. When we read the dates on tombs, some yesterday, some 600 years ago, we consider that great day when we will all be contemporaries and make our appearance together.
We're here on the banks of the River Feel at Dysart. The River Feel has three main tributaries. One of them, actually, the River Gailey, which is flowing just to the north of us, joins it here at Coolagown at a place called the Island. The River Brick, which is slightly west of us, joins it below at the end of the Dysart marshes. And the River Smearla, which is another one big tributary of the River Feel, joins it above in Lower Bunnyara. It was at this spot in 1932, with the clearing of the church hall here. The church hall was what they called the fishing hall that was here. And at this very spot where the church hall is, actually, there were 6 or 8 dugout canoes. They had to be pulled up out of the sludge in the river, and they were up on the bank there for a bit. Apparently, the National Museum did come down and pick the best one, and the rest of them were left to rot. Incidentally as well, there was one other important thing. Prior to the doing of the brick and cassion drainage, there did a very rare plant grow from the mouth of the cassion roughly to here at Coolagown. That little plant was known as Scirpus nanus. It was a very, very small rush, and it grew profusely there. The only other place it was growing actually in this country was out at the mouth of the Avoca River in the east coast. Naturally, the river is very wide here, and again, at a very minimum, it could be low water, it could be probably 3 meters deep. Then again, when you have a spring tide, you could add another 4 to 5 meters, which meant that there is a massive quantity of water. Now, when the brick and cassion drainage came in the 1950s, and the drainage had to be done due to the damage caused by the awful floods, especially the floods of June 1926, November 1941, and August 1946, which caused total chaos and a whole loss of food for cattle as well. But again, the cassion drainage was started. It was aided by what was known as the Marshall Aid Plan for the recovery of Europe. But it did do an immense job of drainage, and they built up the banks, and it relieved people from the awful floods, which had been so much part of the century prior to that. The other thing as well, when St. Trilloch, the wanderer, when he came here to Dysart, he came in a little fishing raft, and apparently there was some sort of a place that he was able to pull in his boat, and in MacFibrish's genealogy of Irish saints, it is described as port aforesail. But the other thing was when St. Trilloch's brothers came in search of him, there was a fisherman fishing locally. So that goes to say that even back in the late 500s, there was somebody fishing on this river with a boat and net. The boat they would have been using would have been a dugout canoe. And again, thankfully today, we can see right behind my bank, there are people boat fishing still today with traditional boat fishing.
I love the feel. I love the feel as I recall the day when first I parted from its lovely shore. O'er oceans wide with throbbing hearts I pray that I might see its soft green banks once more. I love the feel and its entrancing winds through Listowel's sweet and lovely vale. At every curve its flowing pathway finds enchanted spots from out some fairy tale. I love the feel when flowers bloom again, and when in fancy through the glens I roam. In childhood days, oh, I was happy then, now fondest memories ever call me home. I love the feel at night and noon and morn, at every hour, from rise to ebb of tide. Its verdant banks the trees and woods adorn, where lonely cot and stately mansion hide. Feel bank bloom. Flood embalmed for months, then little by little, As water's level retreats down to a bedded trickle, these sloping banks take the floor in flower, making quite a stir, accents wind-powered. Patient beneath ripples so short since, biding time there, harbouring in roots their tints to come, planning their appearance to perfection, as overhead a sun slings its setting reflection. Now, true to the cues of light and its heat, inches and feet extend, and bending stalks compete and meet each other face to petalled face, each zealously guarding its appointed place. In the jealous scheme of things lacustrine, spurting towards well-signed finishing line of seed, regeneration uppermost on each mind, not far removed from ours, our highs that bind. The raised banks of the river and the adjoining open spaces provide an ideal habitat for a wide variety of wild flowers. This beautiful display is easily accessible to and within easy reach of the passerby. Sedge. Sedge with meadow scent mingling over the flow of sustainable spring energy, silent, always on the go, betokening the inaudible tick of the earth. Hedge with sedge scent, silent, always on the grow, mingling over fields flow, sustaining the inaudible tick of the earth.
I am standing here on a bank of traditionally Sláán-cut turf on the Dysart end of Balnagar Bog. Actually, I am looking down at the remnants of what was the Monk's Roadway, which was composed totally of mud, and that stretched roughly from the eastern bank of the River Brick to the Church of St. Trilloch at Dysart. Looking down at it now, it appears there in the centre of it that it was about 12 inches deep. Again, that's probably due to the distortion of cutting the turf and the Sláán work. The width of it appears to be about 7 feet, and we can see that it's about a metre underneath the surface of the bog, which would indicate that it was laid down 1600 years ago. And it did facilitate the monks crossing the bog. It was close enough to 3 miles. On the western side of the River Brick, it was not a mud road, but it was a toker, or a road which was made up of wooden planks laid lengthwise and others across them, and the monks used that to get across from the abbey at Ratu to the abbey at Dysart. We're here at the old court in Lichna. One of the homes of the Fitzmaurices, they were the family that the whole territory on the southern side of the river is called after Clan Morris. They were originally in Ardfert and then they moved on here to Lichna. They had a castle, I believe, on my left-hand side here, which was knocked down in the early years. And then the old court was built. It was a massive building. They were associated with the Petty family, the map-making family, and apparently the decorations within that house were something else. There was beautiful pictures that adorned the walls. There was beautiful facilities. They had their safe house, or their hermitage or place of refuge was at the other side of the river. Further down you had the cock house, which was a place of diversion for them when they wanted something to do or to pass away the time. And at the lower end of it was Lady Lichna's well. Of course, we have to believe, you see, the Fitzmaurices were lords of Kerry, so they did hold sway for 3 or 4 or 5 centuries. Eventually, like everything else, they went into total dissolution and they are now completely disappeared.
Garamahagut, Tim. The old court Lisna, a massive building for the 1600s and 1700s, graced by the glamorous and vivacious Lady Lisna. Reminds me very much of going to national school in the 50s, where we studied a poem in Irish called Kilcosh, a ruin in dereliction, but in its heyday, a fascinating place. So it also reminds me of this Lady Lixnaw, who was, in her day, one of the finest ladies of the region indeed. So over to Kilcosh. Cad the Yainfamage fasta gan Ahmed, tá Jeru na Gulcha lár, níl tracht Kilcosh no a chaglach, is ní clúnfer a cling go bra. An áitiúd nargoniu an javan, for Gradam is major harm ná, via early ag tarrant haar town an is an tafrin bin da rá. Tá cio ag tichim creva aun, na glanan le grain na lá. Tá smooch ag tichim on spare aun, is a quich ishka goléir ag trá. Níl quil, níl quillin, níl quairan. Ach clocha gus mail clochan, park na farisha gan crevaun, is Jimmy an game hun fine. Acum muire is a risa, go daga si a rish huggin slán, go mai rinky fada ag gawal chimpel, ciol velin is chincha knav. Go doctor an balisha or shincher, kill cash vra, a rish go hard, is go brach no go jukfi an gila, na fekfari a rish law. Some lines here in honour of the wonderful Lady Lixnaw, who lived here as well as in London. Old Court, Lixnaw. 3 or more hundred short years since, refined life revolved around Old Court. Lady Lixnaw, not known to mince her words, extolled this place as her favourite port of call, and was seen to visibly wince when leaving this region of rhymers and spirited sport. A spot where the founders lived and died seemed once more dear than life. Ancestral trees or gardens rich in memories glorified marriages, alliances, and families, and every bride's ambition satisfied. Where fashion or mere fantasy decrees, we shift about, all that great glory spent, like some poor Arab tribesman in his tent.
We are here in the foreground of what is called the Hermitage in Lixnaw. It certainly is associated with the Fitzmaurice family, which were so much part of Lixnaw for so many years, because they did live at the eastern side of the river in what we know to be the Old Court. The Hermitage as such could be deemed to be a safe place, because looking at the structure, the first floor is supported by 4 vaults, and it does appear that the only access to the second floor and the upper floor was via ladder of some description or other, whereby when the ladder was pulled up, it meant that all the inhabitants in the upper 2 stories of the building were very, very safe from harm and from invasion. It is similar in appearance to Tomb Daly. That's the one belonging to the Mahonys in Ashkeaton in County Limerick. The one thing that they differ in that Tomb Daly had a very narrow stairs as you went up at one of the ends of the structure. And again, that stairs could easily be protected by somebody with weapons. But all in all, it is certainly part of, very much associated with the Fitzmaurice family, and it was on the way to Kiltomey, which was part of their burial ground. At some stage, one of the oldest stone bridges that's built here in North Kerry was built, I'd say, at the insistence of the Fitzmaurice family. Now, there was a real problem associated with the foundation of one of the pillars, and it does appear that amongst other things that was used to support that pillars were bags of woolen rope which were bedded down in the slab. There was possibly timber or some other material put on them, but apparently, whatever way they'd done it, time has tested it and proved it to be worthwhile, because that bridge is in excellent condition today.
An old flame there or something.
We are here in the grounds of Kiltomey graveyard. We are standing adjacent to what is believed to have been the old church that was here in Kiltomey. Now, while at first would have been the burial ground of the Fitzmaurices, when the Fitzmaurice family moved to Lixnaw, it would appear that very many of the Fitzmaurices were buried here in this graveyard, especially in the precincts of the church that was associated with this graveyard. And we can see here some of the memorial tablets that were used as family memorials here belonging to the Fitzmaurices. And as I say, it does appear to have been the burial ground that was used by them primarily here in Lixnaw. There was one other exception, in the sense that a few members of the family built a new mausoleum over in what was called the Monument, and a number of them were buried there. Unfortunately, that mausoleum and its occupants and everything that was associated has disappeared off the face of the planet. No, there was some other one or two of the wells, the blessed wells, especially the one in Coolard, and they said there was a young fellow with a very bad psoriasis in the old days before the but his face had to be bandaged, but he was on the way home from the well. And Pilgrim's House, they're both here on the left, and other which is a local altar, and altar over there is it came from either the Franciscan friary in a cut of the Kyrie-eleison Abbey, but that was piece of
Hello, my friend. What's your name? Shake hands. What? How are you? Come here and shake hands.
What's your name?
Come here and shake hands, Lizzie. What's your name? You're a great boy. Here, shake hands.
Who cuts the grass, by the way?
Myself. Well, you see, I used to be doing it for her before we ever bought the place.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I know that from, do you know, there's a wolf girl married across the road.
Oh, John Hargan.
Yeah, that's the woman we're talking about, yeah.
That's all you got, is it?
That's not our God.
Who put this?
That was Tim. Tim.
Hey! Why? Look!
Which saint is that?
What?
What saint is that?
Who's that?
Yeah. He has a baby.
Baby Jesus.
Is it?
Yeah.
Could be.
Well,
What's this dodo for Jesus? What's this dodo for Jesus?
And you get the sound of the water.
oh yeah. Oh, sorry.
Sit. Oh!
Oh!
Who put this Jesus in there? What Jesus? Hey!
We are here at Weathers Well, which is one of North Kerry's famous blessed wells. It was here in this blessed well that Bishop Erk baptised St. Brendan, our patron saint of our county. On my right hand side is the Pilgrim's House. When people came here to pay the visits, they would have taken the water out with a bucket and they would have gone into the Pilgrim's House to wash their feet or wash their head or wash whatever part was affected. The traditional day for doing the rounds here was the Saturday before St. John's Day. People would say, how far away did people come from? Even people came from the Maharees to do the rounds here at this blessed well. It is associated with St. Brendan, but St. Ita was the foster mother of St. Brendan, and it is said that St. Ita's order of nuns would have had a convent very close, literally adjacent to the site that's here. This is the altar here at Tubbernamolt or Weathers Well, and it was used during the penal times. It does appear, tradition has it anyhow, that it came from the Franciscan friary in Ardfert after its dissolution during troubled times. Apparently it was used to say Mass, and it was used during the Mass that all the people had a miraculous escape from the soldiers and the hounds. The effigies on the front of it, I believe, are Bishop Erk, St. Brendan, and the third one is probably St. Ita, because she was St. Brendan's foster mother. And the grave in the background, which is behind our other little altar here, is probably believed to be the grave of St. Ita, or one of the nuns associated with St. Ita's convent that was here adjacent to the Blessed Well. I'm standing here in front of the present altar, and when people came to visit the Blessed Well here and to pay the rounds, they always left some trinkets or some personal items after them. You can see those relatively clearly up here. There were a number of people that would have come literally crippled, walking with the aid of a walking stick. And what they would actually do is they were going home cured, and they would leave the walking stick stuck on the ditch. Just on the background here, you can clearly see where the grave of St. Ita or one of her sisters is marked.
Weathers well. Surrounding trees and varied brush have come and gone a dozen times, as has the pilgrim crush, and the merely curious in their primes and in their dotage grim. While all along, all through, the stones that line the Weathers well have stayed intact, to imbue all comers to this leafy dell with a special sense of place. The pilgrim house is modest by our exalted standards, but it welcomed every passing guest fulsomely and never pandered to pretensions. Glór den ahar, agus den wach, agus an spirit neve, mar virdus, mar tafos. We come in awe and homage, linger a while in silent prayer, and through our mental landscape rummage, to seek and find that secret lair which emits the redeeming knell in the sacred precinct of Weathers well.
We are here in the grounds of Ardfert Cathedral. You can see just behind me there the beautiful east window and side decorations there on the altar. Again, the other thing is that if you notice the 9 lancet windows that are up there, they were on the southern side of it, and they were leaving in a lot of light into the cathedral. They are supposed to be one for each of the 9 choirs of angels. We can see which was you entered from the western side was the Hiberno Romanesque doorway, which was an entrance to that part of the chapel. Just outside on where the graveyard is today, you had a round tower which was 120 feet high. Then at the far west of it, you had Temple na Grifa, which was a chapel that was even much used by the ordinary people. And just as we came a little nearer to the cathedral itself, we had Temple na Hoa, or the Temple of the Blessed Virgin Mary. On the eastern side, across the road, was the Fitzmaurice Castle. The Fitzmaurices would be some of the people who would have endowed the sites and the grounds and some of the buildings to this place.
St. Brendan lived from 483 to 577 AD. Here are some lines of tribute to him. Away from our North Kerry homeland, fierce Kiriga have driven my people, pagan marauders, a motley band, which we Altraga decry from every steeple. So we went to the north along the Shannon till we reached the plain of Roscommon, and west to Annett Down and to remote Kilbannon, from Kerry Feast to Galway Famine. In Clonfert we laid our cornerstone, in Clontushgurt faultless church arose. With God-blessed toil and ourselves alone, our monasteries grew, cut through our woes. But still we think of Cahir Orja, Weathers well and Charmanerk, Finnet, Lyrig and Ardfert, and hillside resonance of that bell. For roving brigands we stay on high alert. Cobri Macquinera, our chieftain great, led us to this Connacht tract. For the Kiriga we harbour no hate, even if by them our Kerry homes were sacked.
In this beautiful August day, we are here on the site of Tarman Erk, or the sanctuary of Saint Erk, or Bishop Erk as he was. All we see is the remains of what was Bishop Erk's early church that was here. A sister church which was down in Kilmacadaw on the southern slopes of Ballyhigh Hill. That would have been another sister church of it. It was here that Bishop Erk ordained St. Brendan, our patron saint. And when St. Brendan was looking for a site for his new church, apparently they had their drawings made up and they were looking at a site back in a place called the Golan, which is back the road, from which there is a fabulous view. But apparently a dove visited the site while they were there, picked up the plans for their church and flew very slowly. When they eventually found them, they were over in Ardfert, which is where Ardfert Cathedral is today.
Tim.
Okay, while the local name for this place might have been called the Mukan, which we don't have an exact definition for, but the evidence is that the site of the overgrown site here of the briars and the trees and the bushes is the exact site of Bishop Erk's church. And we can see it was a lovely elevated site looking towards Slievemish, looking out towards the bay, towards Ballyhigh.
Behind me is the fascinating and evocative site of St. Erk's Church. And these lines are entitled Tarman Erk. In the wave-tossed 6th century, Brendan the Navigator was in his stride. Moved by faith, ably venturing to distant shores, tying his pride to the mast, a credit to our heritage. In his memory secluded Tarman Erk. Quiet nook, his ordination seen. Imbued by this, he did not shirk his priestly duties as he left an island green for other climes and onerous tasks ahead. We genuflect and lowly bow our heads solemnly on this hallowed ground, a ground which guardian angels tread. A field-bound hollow and a little imperceptible mound, site of the St. Erk Church, not a sound. Truly something out of this world for the wandering poet and his trusty guide. When all our human flags are finally furled and countless generations have lived and died, Tarman Erk's vibrations will abide.
We are here at Lerrig Loch. It's a freshwater lake in the townland of Lerrig. I suppose one would say, where does it drain out of, that it is a turlock or something like that, but it isn't. Apparently the drainage takes place through subterranean passages down through Kilmiley and into the Aquaric River. Certainly the loch is a home for all the different mallards, the different breeds of them. We can see here the herring gulls, the swans and the water hens. The house in the background there was the house that my grandmother was evicted out of in the 1880s. She lived for a period of time in a land league house in Lower Kilmiley until she was given what was known as Board of Guardians house over in Ardrahan.
Goramahaguth, Tim. Lerrig Loch, lake with the freshest of fresh waters, ducks of varied hues pecking by its shore, haunt of busily beavering otters, prompts the rhymer to his core. Surrounding banks bedecked by reeds, Crannog sight rising from the ripples reminds us of ancestral deeds, survival in a time that cripples. For Firbolgs, a haven of security, now sanctuary for wild bird life, Lerrig Loch in its pristine purity, man's woes can cut as with a knife. And this is a tribute to spring in the context of Lerrig Loch in my background here. The air was soft, the ground still cold. In the dull pasture where I strolled was something I could not believe. Dead grass appeared to slide and heave. Though still too frozen flat to stir, and rocks to twitch and all to blur, what was that rippling of the land was matter getting out of hand and making free with natural law. I stopped and blinked, and then I saw a fact as eerie as a dream. There was a subtle flood of steam moving upon the face of things. It came from standing pools and springs, and what of snow was still around. It came of winters giving ground, so that the freeze was coming out, as when a set mind, blessed by doubt, relaxes into mother wit. Flowers, I said, will come of it.
In the townland of Glendahlen, overlooking the sea with Loop Head in the distance. Just below us is St. Dahalan's Holy Well, and if you look back towards the hill behind us, you can see the St. Dahalan's convent. It was at this convent that the marauders who first went marauding the convent went blind, and they had to go back to St. Dahalan to beg for mercy. And she told them, if you go and bathe your eyes in the well which is beneath us here, you will get back your sight. When they came and they washed their eyes with the water of the blessed well, they got back their sight again. And the well today even is considered to have properties of curing eye diseases. On Clearoo, which is up on the south of me here, would have been an old route. Some people might have called it on Schleeroo, but again, St. Bridget, our patron saint, visited St. Dahalan here on numerous occasions, and it would appear that St. Bridget travelled close enough to on Clearoo And again, if we trace it, that St. Bridget went from here on over towards the Cashin, we find a blessed well there called St. Bridget's Well. And apparently that route, or Schlee, if you like, went on over towards Knockanur and on towards Atee and Newcastle West. The well beneath me here is beautifully done up, and we are indebted to the late Father Kirby, who certainly put a lot of effort and got a lot of local help to improve the well and make it what it is today.
Gunairi an Bóthar Leath, Tim. This is truly a holy well of panoramic scope, St. Dathlan's Holy Well. Nestled in a leafy valley hollow under a long low hill with grassy sides, our eyes look up to the sloping ridge and follow a line from convent ruin to where a rabbit hides. In this hollow, cool, clear water springs eternal, St. Dathlan's Holy Well. To here, the pattern pilgrim brings mementos to perpetuate the good saint's spell. Far from the madding crowd and noise, what better place to pen an ode of joy? Mind in balance, given special poise, sinking spirits saved by a welled-up boy. When St. Bridget stayed on the ridge above, gazing over the gentle valleyscape, she was surely imbued with grace and with love, contemplating her destiny just then taking shape.
Welcome to Minnigahan.
Oh, hello.
Thank you very much, Tom. How are you?
haven't seen you for ages.
Thank you very much.
This man I don't know
This is
that.
John Malachy Raftery from Glenamady.
John Malachy Raftery, a double barrel name.
He writes poetry, you see, and that's why we're nearly here.
Here, well, it's a place for
That's the kind
poetry,
of
all
thing that
right.
I wrote about Minnigahan Pier there. Now. I hope you approve of it, you know. But it's nice to meet some of the local people that add colour to the situation
Yeah,
here,
of course it is.
rather than listening to abstract things all the time.
Yes, it is.
Isn't that right?
Yeah.
Abstract things.
I layer upon layer because you're very conscious of the layering here.
We're here at Minnigahan Pier on the North Kerry coastline. It is a small fishing port, as you can see from the boats that surround us and some fishermen going out to fish now. But maybe the important thing here is the beautiful cliffscape that's behind my back. I suppose one can see the caverns in the rocks, and one can see the effects of the storms and the awful tides and the way they have gouged out portions of the rock. It's from here as well that when the tide is coming, that we find this awful strange noise sometimes that we hear up in North Kerry called Paul a Glugger. That the further out we seem to hear that in North Kerry, it has a weather tale to tell, and there are other times then and we hear it nearer to Ballybunnan. But it's a strange noise, and it can be heard as far away as the Wye on a quiet evening. Now the other thing about this particular pier was that when the Lusitania was blown up during World War I, 3 of the passengers on the Lusitania, their bodies were washed ashore here. They were taken up actually, and they were buried above in Killoory graveyard, which is near Causeway. One of them was later disinterred, and he was taken home to America to be buried.
Míle buíochas, Tim. Minnigahan Pier. The ocean has been busy for long, toiling effortlessly night and day, to celestial ears a force on song, no sea that did not have its say, exposing geology layer upon layer, the human presence tenuous and frail, our name giving, Minnigahan, a kind of dare. Putting our stamp on it is our holy grail. But long before an eye and ear attested, and long after the reign of biped senses, chunks of rock from land will be wrested by waves mocking past, present and future tenses. So what can we do here but reflect on ridiculousness of self-importance as light and shade on the cliff deflect each other? On our knees we look for portents. Minagahan. Across the shining silver strand I saw the golden sea. The waves were laughing in the sun and rolling up to me. Then back they went and on they came and tumbled in the caves. I think that I have never seen such happy things as waves.
We're here in the townland of Kilmore, and we're inside in the little Killeen that's here on the very verge of the seashore. Behind us we can see that we're close enough to the mouth of the Shannon because we can see the tankers going up and down in the background and probably Loop Head. Kilmore takes its name, or maybe it could be called the headland of the 7 churches, because apparently they were in monastic times. There were 7 churches around here. Apparently, as well as being a Killeen, the bodies of sailors who were drowned at sea and who were washed ashore, there were a number of them buried here inside in this Killeen as well. The other important thing, I suppose, was that Robert Emmet, our famous patriot, he always spent his summer holidays here with his grandmother, Mrs. Mason.
Goramahaguth, Tim. Kilmore, Killian and burial ground. To be lost and buried at sea is a token of tragedy. To be interred by a seashore, even if wind-racked headstones are cracked and broken, is a consolation for the living, remains kept in store. Killeen and burial ground of dramatic Kilmore, facing out to the swelling, cresting surf, never resting, is an apt resting place forevermore for children of the rainbow and the turf. Line upon line of white foam, rising and falling, framed by the long, low hill beyond, where fisher folk ply their trade of trawling, who here could remain in a slough of despond? Down from the cross is a slippery slope, treacherous seaweed and moss underfoot, like our grope through life, yet living in hope of salvation, no heavenly door to us shut.
Hi Pat, my name is Tim Griffin and you're Pat Sullivan, and you originally come from over around the Cashin.
From the Cashin side, yeah.
Yeah, are you familiar with Kilmore here and the little burial ground here in the background?
Well, I was born and raised around here, and I have actually relations buried there. Would be a little stillborn child.
Yeah, stillborn child, yeah. And sure, stillborn children or infants, they would have been buried there. They would have been buried because it was an Irish graveyard to where they were.
And that's correct, yeah.
And there was something as well that there were bodies of sailors who were washed ashore, that they would have either some 1 or 2 or 3 of them buried there as well, I believe.
Yeah, that's what our fathers and grandfathers told us anyway, that they were buried there.
That they were buried there, yeah. And they would have drawn sand as well.
No, it's nice to meet you. John Malachy Raftery from Glenamaddy, and it's very nice to meet you here. It's a dramatic place, isn't it? Here, it's a lovely place.
And needless to say, in recent years, the council have done a fair bit of work there to improve the erosion, to stop the erosion being done by the very high tides.
Oh, they have, yeah. Well, only for those rocks and things there, no, that car park wouldn't be.
The car park wouldn't be safe.
No.
Thank you very much, Pat. You're a mighty gentleman, yeah. We are here in Ratu graveyard. One cannot but be awestruck by the round tower, you know, the beautiful sandstone round tower that is there with its 4 top windows facing the cardinal points. The church we're inside actually probably dates from maybe the 14th or 15th century, believed to have been rebuilt with stones from an earlier monastic church that was on this site. Also on this site, of course, was the Abbey Church that is further down the field from us, from which ran the Monk's Roadway from Ratu here to Dysart and probably on to the church at Killahacrim. The other thing that was here is that we had the Church of St. Augustine that was out here. Now, that church is not here now because it was moved stone by stone in the 50s and rebuilt in Ballybunion. And that church is now the Ballybunion Public Library.
More than 1,000 years ago, Ratu had its very own skyscraper, a massive imposing structure which I'm now looking at. Some lines to commemorate and honour this skyscraper of Ratu. Rath Hui, meaning Northern Rath. Ring Fort long since past discovery, but another ring soars skywards, round-towered protection against robbery by marauding Northmen, Vikings. They were warriors, not bards. Depredations on this northern Rath demanded sanctuary, Lugnus place of refuge. Then Viking slaves were crudely branded. The tower must be stout and tall and large. Needing no architect, design was simple. From the simple, beauty tends to follow. We marvel at such structures, tower or temple. Friaries, roofless abbeys, haunts of swallow. Homo homini lupus, man is a wolf to man. Thus it was, and sadly will be, eternally. Fight or flight, replaced here by another plan, to stay put, lofty, under siege, supernally.